Hello, and thank you all for joining us for tonight's Hudson Valley YA Society event with authors Sharon G. Flake, Sabina Khan, Crystal Maldonado, and Brittany Morris. My name is Leif Cantrell, and I am Oblong's Digital and Events Manager, and I will be your MC this evening. So before we begin, I just want to go over a couple of brief housekeeping notes. The first is there is a Buy the Book button down at the bottom center of your screen. If you click on that, it'll lead you to sign copies of tonight's books. And there is also an Ask a Question button down below the Buy the Books button. If you click on that, you will be able to ask questions of tonight's authors, and at any point throughout tonight's event, please, we encourage you, we love your questions, and we want to answer them. So please feel free to ask questions. Sharon, Sabina, Crystal, and Brittany, welcome. I'm so glad that we can make this panel happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
We're so excited about all of your new YA novels. And so what's going to happen now is I'm going to invite each of you to speak and talk a little bit about your books, maybe read a little bit if you want to, and then we'll all talk together for a bit. Sound good?
Perfect.
That's great.
So we're going to start with you, Sharon. Sharon is a 3-time Coretta Scott King award-winning author who writes about African-American youth and is not afraid to take on tough topics and shine light onto people and places that society doesn't always care to see. Sharon refers to herself as an inner city baby at heart, and the voices from the communities she grew up in can be heard in her novels. She is the author of best-selling award-winning novel The Skin I'm In, and is with us this evening to discuss its much-anticipated companion, The Life I'm In, which tells the unflinching story of Char, a young woman trapped in the underworld of human trafficking. Sharon, welcome. Would you please talk a little bit about your new book, The Life I'm In?
The Life I'm In, thank you much. There it is, came out in January. 4-star reviews. I'm really excited. People have been waiting for that book for about 23 years after The Skin I'm In came out. So I finally wrote it, and it's from Charlize Jones' perspective, who was the bully in The Skin I'm In. People have been asking me for over a decade, how is Char? Is she okay? So this is Char's story, right? Char's sister threatened for a while to send her to live with her grandparents. And so the book starts off with Char getting on the bus. She makes a decision along the way, and that is to run away. And some things happen to her. Human trafficking, $150 billion business. Some other things are a theme show up in the novel too, right? Second chances, who doesn't need that, right? Repairing friendships. We see Char is vulnerable and smart and determined, but we also see her facing some stuff that millions of young people face around the world as a result. So I wanted to read a little bit about Char when she has run away and she's sort of trying to make it on her own. July 30th, midnight. It's not like I planned it. It just happened. Me walking down to the first floor and leaving the building altogether with her in the room by herself. I got the right to have some time for myself, I think. I've been a good mother, better than a real one. Plus, she is asleep, washed and changed. If I stay with her one more minute, she and me would both be sorry. The line to the club next door is bananas. Down the block, wrapped around the corner, weed and cigarette smoke call my name. Men in fast cars call me out my name. Hang out the windows with their tongues dancing. Ask if I need a ride, got someplace to go, want to hook up. I give one the finger, ignore the rest, smile inside, because some girls don't get no play. Cars pull up to the curve across the street. Junkers, SUVs, Lincolns, a Subaru full of white dudes parks. 2 women walk up to the car. The lady in the room up the hall from mine waves on her way out the building. Watch yourself out there, sugar. Gemini stops traffic on her way across the street. Her heels tall as light poles, it seems. Don't slow her down none. Her silver pleated skirt and see-through top means she's in the car before she gets to the other side. She's independent on her own, got no master, she told me once, and I don't bring my work home. There's plenty of ways to make money, Juju would tell me, and that's not and ways not to make money. I taught you the best I could, my sister said. Make good choices. I don't judge. Folks got to eat. Now that I got a baby, I see how you can end up doing things you never planned. It's nice out, breezy, warm. The moon ain't full, but it's bright like a searchlight shining on us. I got on my bunny rabbit slippers and pajama bottoms. I ain't out here long when a kid stops me begging for Lucy's. I laugh when he gets to me, grabbing my smokes out my back pocket. I ask if his kindergarten teacher knows he's out here. He cracks me up when he says she's the one that sent him. I give him a cigarette, light it up. He sees somebody and goes without saying thanks. He's long gone when I start to count the people in line at the club. They got to pay money to get in, so all I'm looking at is money, dollar bills. For an hour, I stayed there thinking of ways to get some of that money. I put in the application at the $1 store yesterday while Cricket was napping. I went in the club too, asking that they needed someone to wash dishes, sweep up. I'm too young, they say, 16. So did the pawn shop owner. How people expect me to eat, pay rent, and buy diapers if I can't get paid? That's Charlize.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome Sabina Khan. Sabina is an educational consultant and self-proclaimed karaoke enthusiast who is joining us today from British Columbia. She is the author of The Love and Lies of Rukhsana Ali, and she has lived all over the world in Germany, Bangladesh, Macao, Illinois, and Texas, and is now settled in Canada with her family and apparently the best puppy in the world. In her new novel, Zara Hussein is Here, Zara's family has waited years for their visa process to be finalized so that they can officially become U.S. citizens. It is a timely look at what it means to be an immigrant in America today and the endurance of hope and faith in the face of hate. Sabina, welcome. Could you please also tell us a little bit about your book and why you chose this particular subject?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. This is my new book, Zara Hussein is Here. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. And it's about Zara Hussein, who is a Pakistani immigrant, 17 years old. Her family immigrated to Corpus Christi, Texas. Her father is a doctor, and they're eagerly awaiting their green card. And they've been waiting for 7 or 8 years now, and they're expecting to get it very soon, just in time for Zara to apply to university in the fall. Unfortunately, Zara deals with a lot of Islamophobia and racism almost on a daily basis, and there is one particular bully at her school who eventually takes things so far that it actually jeopardizes her whole family's status, immigration status in the US, and it looks like they might have to leave the country because of what he did. And Zara doesn't accept that. So she refuses to just pack up and leave because this is the only home she's ever known. And she wants to fight back. And so she does. She pushes back. She wants to find a way to stay in the United States because she doesn't think that they've done anything wrong and that they should pay the price for someone else's prejudices. And so the story is really about her trying to carve out a space for herself where she feels safe and doesn't feel like she doesn't belong, which is something she has felt for a lot of her life. And and I just wanted to sort of highlight this struggle that immigrants go through, because my family and I also went through something similar, not as drastic as what Zara's family goes through, but we actually did have to pack up and leave the States and move to Canada about 20 years ago when we had very young children and had no financial safety net or anything. So we had to leave simply because our lawyer forgot to file a crucial piece of documentation and forgot to tell us, which derailed the whole process. And so we had to leave the country. And so that sort of left us feeling very insecure and, always waiting for something else to go wrong. And that's just, it's not right for anyone to have to feel this way when all they want is to build a good life. And, they're not doing anything wrong. And so I just kind of wanted to bring that to light. And I will read a little bit from Zara. So it's chapter 1. Inhale, exhale, repeat. I focus on each breath, pushing the anger to the back of my mind. It's nothing new, this need to punch something, to rage at the world. This is my reality and I'm used to it. That almost angers me more than the actual microaggressions I deal with daily. I concentrate on each pattern as I step, kick, and punch, chasing that elusive feeling of peace. Finally, it's there, the calm after the storm, and I stop to catch my breath. Mr. Clare's last class of the day is just finishing up, so the students are filing out of the rec center. Hey, Zara, I haven't seen you here for a while, he says, stacking the last of the boards and placing them inside the cabinet. He was my Taekwondo instructor for years, ever since I was 6 years old and just starting out. I'm glad Abu didn't let me quit after I got my green belt. I remember being so frustrated when I didn't pass the exam the first time that I just wanted to stop. But Abu would help me with my patterns, and Ammi would quiz me on the tenets: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. It didn't help that I used to be terrified of Mr. Clare and that every time he looked at me, I turned into a noodle. These days, we can both laugh about it. I still go there sometimes to help him out with the white belts. But on days like today, when I feel like I might lose control, it's a sanctuary. It's just been super busy with school, I reply. I want this space to be free of all the other stuff in my life right now. Mr. Clare knows my family well. Given that all three of us spent a great deal of time here up until I was 15, that's when I finally got my black belt. I give him a hand with the sliding room divider, and then we start. He goes easy on me at first, just a few basic jump kicks, axe kicks, and hook kicks. Then he steps it up, and I have to watch out. I use a roundhouse kick as bait. I step into the maneuver anticipating his counter, but I continue to spin, executing a perfect hook kick, just like he taught me. He throws me a smile. I see you haven't forgotten. Good. I smile back. Thanks for letting me hang out. He waves his hand dismissively. You know you're welcome any time. I step out into the night and wait for Abu to pick me up. My blouse sticks to my skin, and my hair has morphed into a giant ball of frizz in the 80-degree heat of this humid evening. Just because I'm used to living in a perpetual sauna doesn't mean I like it at all. Abu's BMW rolls up, and I slide in gratefully to let the coolness from the air conditioning vent blast in my face. Thanks for picking me up, I say, leaning over to give him a quick peck on the cheek. I was just out on my way home, so it worked out perfectly, he said. Did Ami need the car today? I nod silently, looking out the window. It's almost 9 o'clock, but it's still a little light out. Wherever I end up moving for college next year, I want to go someplace with actual seasons. What's the matter, beta? Abu looks at me before checking his backup camera as he pulls out of the parking lot. You look tense. Everything okay at school? It's not, but I don't want to worry him. On the other hand, he'll worry more if I don't tell him. Things have been weird lately, I begin, still hesitant to confide in him. Weird how, beta? Abu turns on South Staples, passing a row of apartment buildings and a Circle K. Just some kids at school. They've been saying a lot of stuff lately. Stupid things about Muslims. The light turns yellow, then red, and Abu brings the car to a stop. He turns to me, concern deepening the lines on his forehead. Zara, you have to tell us these things, he says. I don't want you to be scared every time I go to school. You know how Ammi gets. Yes, beta, I know, Abu says. The light turns green and we're moving again. But we need to know what's happening. You know how quickly things can get out of hand. I know, Abu, and I promise I'll tell you. But let's just keep it between us, he says. No need to worry your mother. The peace I felt is gone now. The truth, I worry enough for all of us.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabina, and thank you for sharing. Our next author is Crystal Maldonado, who is joining us from Western Massachusetts this evening.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Crystal. By day, Crystal is a social media manager working in higher education, and by night, she is a writer who loves Beyonce, shopping, and spending too much time on her phone. Her work has been published in the Hartford Courant, BuzzFeed, and Latina Magazine. Her new novel, Fat Chance Charlie Vega, tackles the challenges of coming of age as a fat brown girl in white Connecticut suburb. The book also grapples with our relationships to our parents, our bodies, our cultures, and ourselves, and the pressure upon us to conform. Welcome, Crystal. That's a lot of stuff to tackle in one book. Can you tell us about it, please?
Absolutely. I feel like you did a great job and you don't need me to tell you more about it. But so Fat Chance Charlie Vega, as you can see behind me, is a book about a 16-year-old fat Puerto Rican girl who loves reading and writing and love. But she has never been kissed herself. And she really wants to rectify that and fall in love. And so we kind of meet her and she feels like she's living in the shadow of her very perfect best friend, Amelia. She has this kind of tense relationship with her mom, who really wants her to lose weight. And she doesn't have a great relationship with herself, at least not when we meet her. And she feels the world kind of around her, telling her that she should be smaller and be whiter and be quieter. And then she meets Brian, who is this amazing guy who seems to like her for who she is. And he's funny and he's really sweet. And she finally feels like a character in one of the romance novels that she writes. And things are great until they aren't. And she kind of finds out that he asked her best friend out first before he asked her out. And so everything kind of turns into a mess from there. So I like to say that this book is really about love, all different kinds of love. So it's familial love, first love, it's love with your friends. And then, of course, it's all about self-love and body positivity. So I'm going to read a little bit from page 23. And we kind of get into Charlie's head and we get a sense for kind of how she's feeling about herself and her body at the beginning of the book. I was 13 when my dad died, and I was 14 when my mother's body changed. Mine was changing too, but not in the way I wanted. I developed, but also widened, going from having baby fat to just being fat. At a time when I was becoming interested in boys, I realized how interested boys were now becoming in my mother. As my mom shed her old body and habits like a snake shedding its skin, the things that had brought us together began to disappear. No more sitting on the couch watching reality TV together. No more shopping for clothes. We couldn't patronize the same stores. Absolutely no more cooking together unless it was grilled chicken and broccoli. No delighting in indulgent meals or whipping up decadent desserts. No, nope, never. Food was no longer a celebration. We ate to survive and nothing more. I tried it her way for a while. I really did. But I missed my dad. I missed my mom, and I missed my old life. I missed food. So she shrank. I didn't. Instead, I refocused. I amped up my writing, which helped me escape my brain. I went online and I began to share stories of beautiful girls with happy endings, which made me feel joyful and whole, even if only for a bit. And then slowly through those writing communities, I ended up finding feminism and the fat acceptance movement. And I moved on to writing stories about girls of all sizes from all backgrounds. It started to impact the way I thought about bodies, about nourishment, about diets, about myself. And that was maybe the final wedge between me and my mom. When I tried to talk about some of the things I was learning or questioning, I was swiftly shut down. Her body had been a, quote, prison, she said, and mine was too. I could be, quote, free if only I could commit to being thin. She started looking at me critically, saying things like, do you really want to eat that? Are you sure you're going to go back for seconds? That's what you're wearing? I try not to let it get to me. I recognize that my mom's thoughts about her body and mine are not healthy. And yet my own relationship with my body is so complicated. I'm endlessly surrounded by messages that tell me to love myself, to celebrate stretch marks and soft rolls, to take charge and take up space, to be unapologetically me. Show off that visible belly line, rock a fat bikini. All bodies are beach bodies. I get that. I celebrate that. I believe that. But I'm also surrounded by messages that tell me I need shapewear. I need to lose weight. I need to fit into straight sizes. I need to look like an Insta girl. I need to be tiny to be loved. Even my lived reality seems to support this. I don't mean to seem shallow, but it's like when everyone goes out of their way to tell you what a pretty face you have, you notice. Is it any wonder then I still find myself wishing so badly for this body of mine to be smaller? I've quietly tried the diets and the shakes and the workout plans and the control tops and the wasting birthday wishes on thinness. And simultaneously, I've gotten involved in the fat acceptance movement, celebrating fatness and following the fat fashion hashtag like it's my religion. I believe that people can be healthy at any size. I think other fat girls are absolutely beautiful, but my mind struggles to bridge the gap between the two ideologies. I'm fat and I celebrate other fat people, but I don't quite celebrate me. It sometimes makes me feel like a fraud. So that's a little glimpse into Charlie.
Thank you so much for that. So last but not least is Brittany Morris, who is joining us from Philadelphia this evening. Brittany is Hi, Brittany.
Hi.
Brittany is the author of Slay, Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Wings of Fury, and she has also written for video games including The Lost Legends of Redwall and Subnautica Below Zero. She likes to spend her spare time reading, playing indie video games, and enjoying the rain. Her new novel is called The Cost of Knowing, in which brothers Alex and Isaiah grapple with their past, their future, and what it means to be a young Black man in America in the present, particularly when one of the brothers can see into the future. Welcome, Brittany. Would you please tell us a little bit about your book?
Hi, absolutely. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm the author of Slay and Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Wings of Fury, and most recently, The Cost of Knowing, from which I will be happy to read. A little bit about the book. It is about two Black teenage brothers. Alex, the older one, can see into the future, and Isaiah, the younger one, can see into the past. And everything changes when Alex sees a vision of Isaiah dying in the next few days. And so it becomes a race against time to get to the bottom of this 400-year-old family curse. It features Black men prioritizing their health, how we can invite Black men into conversations about mental health in a way that's intersectional and acknowledges their unique struggle. It talks about the experience that a lot of Black people, including me, feel that we're often sandwiched between anxiety about the future whenever we turn on the news, for example, and intergenerational trauma from the past, slavery, civil rights movement, all that stuff. That's important to remember, but is also emotionally taxing. And the title is so named because there is an emotional cost associated with living in that state. And it makes it especially hard to be present in the moment and stay grounded. So I would like to read a segment from chapter 1 in which Alex is at work at an ice cream shop and his boss is asking him to work up front. I drag my forearm across my face, pull off my other glove and remove my glasses. The vision flashes. One of me wiping my lenses off on a shirt I'm not wearing. One I don't even own yet. I've touched my own glasses so many times that I must be at a few months into the future with visions of them. I make the vision end, and I do exactly what I just saw myself do. Wipe them off. It's become routine for me. Touch item, see vision of exactly what I'm about to do with the item, do exactly what I saw myself do in the vision. Daydreaming again? Asked the boss. His voice is quieter and kinder this time. Sure, daydreaming. That's the closest thing to it that he'll understand, so I nod. I grab the hand towel hanging above the sink and wipe my hands before removing my soaked dishwashing apron. I hang it up by the sink to dry and sigh as the full weight of his words sink in, heavy like an anvil on my chest. I need you up front. I hate working up front. Not because I don't like talking to customers. I'm actually pretty good at that part. And the customers are usually nice. They're mostly young parents with kids under 10 who are in and out in a few minutes. And the kids are almost always well-behaved and happy while they're here because, hey, they're getting ice cream. Nah, I hate working up front because it means touching a million items with my bare hands. It's an anxiety minefield out there. Visions fly through my head with everything I touch, like one of those old-school slide projectors. Every tap of the register screen, every dollar I count, every spoon I pick up, every hand I brush while giving out samples, every cup, every cone, every scoop. I can't focus on all of that and do my job. I can't constantly be thinking of what's going to happen and stay focused on what is happening. It's too much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Brittany.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much for talking a little bit about your books and reading these amazing passages. Before I jump into my questions, do you all have questions for each other? We can also come back to questions for each other if you need.
Well, I have a question. I'm sorry. Crystal, you had a question?
I actually had a question for you. I was curious to know what made you decide to center your follow-up novel on a different character, and like how did you choose who to do that with?
Well, you know what? People have been asking me, like I said, for 23 years, are you going to do a follow-up novel? And I was always, no, never. Because you know what? You read sequels, you see follow-up movies, and you're thinking you should not have done it. Right? And because the school I'm in is so loved and well respected, I really was afraid to do it. Then one day somebody had asked me the question, and maybe it was the right time. And I said I would never do it, but if I did, it would be from Charlize Jones' perspective, and it would be human trafficking. And I think one thing about the human trafficking, because I'd seen an uptick, like we all have, right, over the last 15 years. And then Charlize, I think because I felt there was some elements about her life that might make her vulnerable to it. But even those elements, I won't go into it, were not really what made her vulnerable to it, right?
Mhm.
It turns out, though, that even, I'll just make this really quick, even one encounter with social services can make a kid vulnerable to trafficking. So it really doesn't take a whole lot. But that one encounter means something is a little off at home. And Charlize, both her parents had died. She had failed 7th grade twice, right? She was angry and upset, obviously. And so I think she was the perfect person to pick to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not the easiest, but I think the right one.
Definitely important. Thank you. And did you start to ask a question as well, Sharon? Did you have a question?
I just wanted to ask a quick question of everyone, which was, a question I get asked all the time. How do you start your novel? Do you know the beginning, or you start because you know the end? Do you have to get pictures of characters real fast? Just let people know that.
I started writing this book with sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just had this character that I couldn't get out of my head. For some reason, there's a teenage boy who worked in a toothpaste factory, of all things, and every time he moved the toothpaste down the conveyor belt, he could see the future of it. And I said, okay, how am I going to turn this idea into a book? So then I thought maybe I could put a second character in who could see into the past, and that could create some conflict and everything. And then it hit me that as a Black person, I kind of feel like I have to live that way anyway, constantly thinking about the future and the past. And I went, okay, that I could dive into for 60,000 words. And so we changed the toothpaste factory to an ice cream shop, and now it's a little more readable.
And I'm just going to say this really quick. The novel I just handed in, somebody does work at an ice cream shop, not the main character. So just so you know, I didn't pick it off of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
But they did work at the ice cream shop. So
more ice cream and books. Yay.
more ice cream. Sabina.
Yeah, I think for me, because when I've mentioned this before, when I was growing up, I never saw anyone like me in the books I read, and then years later, when my daughters were reading, they didn't either. And I think for me, the biggest motivation was to write books for young adults like them. And when I'm writing, so far, I always have my daughters in mind as when the characters kind of starts developing, it always comes from something from my daughters and what they would do in a situation that, either of my books. And then the people around them just sort of pop up because, I think of all the relatives I grew up with, in Bangladesh, and just because, and the food and the celebrations and the traditions, I never got a chance to tell those stories. And I've noticed, like, over the years since I've been living in the States and in Canada, when I tell people about something from back home, they're so interested, and it's something that they may not know about, and so that's something that I really want to. I'm so eager to share all of that I think a lot of the stories just sort of fill up with a lot of that, just my normal life, like when I was growing up as a teenager, and then now, and the parents too. A lot of the characters of the parents, a lot of their behavior also comes from either myself or other parents I know who come from the same background as I do, and I don't do outlines and things like that. I've tried, but then I don't follow them. Like I kind of pretend that I'm going to follow the outline, then I end up not doing it. So, but I think it just kind of comes out of me as based on experiences that I've had myself and that my children have had. So yeah, so I don't know. If I write in a different genre, perhaps that might change. But so far, yeah.
Crystal, what about you?
I have sort of a similar experience to Sabina, I think. So I usually start with something that I love, and then it's something that I feel passionate about, and then sort of develop a book from there. So with Fat Chance Charlie Vega, I personally love stories, and I was tired of never seeing anybody like me in those love stories. And I was like, "What? I'm cute. I could be a heroine, right? Like, I could be a cute main character." And that was truly like what inspired it. Was I wanted to make a story that had someone that was fat and that had glasses and that didn't have to change anything about herself in order for other characters around her to think she was worthy and to really appreciate her. And so that was why I wanted to center a story around these things that were really meaningful to me when I was a teenager. I so badly wanted somebody to like me. You know, I had crushes. I was like, I need someone to fall in love with me, like, right? Like, I'm adorable. So, so I really wanted to write a story that showed that, you know, that is possible, and really celebrated bodies of all sizes and people from all different backgrounds. And so that was truly like the inspiration for this. And then my book that I'm working on now, it's a little bit about social media, which I'm also like very obsessed with. So I feel like I take things that I'm really interested in and then sort of use that as like the kernel to decide what I'm going to write about.
Can I just respond to something Crystal just said real fast?
Yeah.
You know, Crystal, I have a novel called Money Hungry, which is my second novel. And in that novel, a girl who is full size is the only girl in the book that has a boyfriend.
Hey.
That book is like 15 years old. And it was an intentional choice because I said to myself, girls who are overweight or full size, whatever you want to call it, they don't get to see themselves as loved. And so he's Asian and African American, and he is madly in love with her. And I did that because I wanted those girls to understand that, you know, they deserve love like anybody else. So.
And that's why we do this, right? We write these books to make people feel like they are worthy. And I feel like each of these stories, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So I love that.
Yeah. And that you're loved. I mean, people can assume that you're not loved. You're worthy of love, but there are many, many girls of all kinds of complexion, hues, and sizes that are out there being loved. And it's up to us and living their lives in all sorts of ways to, as storytellers, to, you know, to remind, to show. All right, Lake, you can have it back.
So Sharon, could you tell us a little bit about your writing process? I think we want to hear from you too.
Well, you know, I tell teachers all the time, you don't write it, you don't teach my process. And part of my process is I never know much about what I'm going to do. So that when you talk about outlines, I'm like, you know, I know very little when I start a book. When I started The Skin I'm In, I knew I wanted to write about a dark-skinned girl. That's it. So, but on page 3, a bully shows up. So I'm really good at following the story. So I tell people I'm not leading a parade so much as following it, right? Even for The Life I'm In, the follow-up to The Skin I'm In. So I wanted to be able to follow and see. So before I even did research, I probably had 2/3 of the book done. And then I went back. Then I started researching and finding, and then you change and tweak and do whatever you want to do so that the characters had the freedom to become who they are and not so much who I wanted. But again, I don't knock anybody's process, right? Because all of it has to work for you. One is not better than the other. I'm just one of those people that I'm definitely afraid if I plan, most times I don't know what I'm gonna wear in the morning, right? You know, I really don't. So planning like makes me like, nervous. So I'm more like, hey, if I could just like jump into the middle of something and I don't know about it, that's fine. I'll panic once I have to hit the water. But so that's sort of probably why I also write that way.
Thank you for that. Well, so now that we know a little bit about all of your writing processes, my next question for you all is, Did you always know that you want to be a writer? And if not, how did you find yourself becoming a writer? And Brittany, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I knew I wanted to be a writer as soon as I found out it was a real profession. There were people behind these books that were on my bookshelf making these things, and I said, "Yep, that's it." I think I was 9, and my 4th grade teacher gave us a journal assignment, and she told us that we had to write each day about what was going on in our life, and she gave us time in the classroom to sit there and write. And my childhood was pretty rough. I had abuse going on at home, and I was bullied heavily at school. And she said to write about what was really going on. I said, okay, y'all don't want to hear about that. I'm just going to make some stuff. So I just started creating characters and just making up a story. And she came to me the next day and said, you could actually do this. Like, you seem to be really excited about this. This is the first time I've seen you get excited about anything in my classroom. You could do this one day. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I could. And then I grew up and took an interest in economics and personal finance, and still pretty passionate about financial literacy at all income levels. And I could talk about predatory lending all day. We'll get into that later. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to talk about that. I can talk about that all day. But I always came back to my first love, which was writing. Never stopped writing. And finally, Slay stuck. And so here I am.
Wow. Sounds like she had Miss Saunders for a teacher. I said, it sounds like you have Miss Saunders for a teacher. That's the character, teacher in The Skin I'm in. So.
Oh, nice.
Definitely a really great teacher.
Yeah.
Sabina, why don't we go with you next?
I think when I was young, I mean, I used to love reading, but I also I would write little stories and then kind of hide them away. Nobody ever would see them. But I don't think I ever thought of that I could become a writer, like as a career, that I could write as a career. And then, I don't know, I just wasn't like, maybe if I was, I'm born now, it would be different. But I think back then it wasn't really something it was more of a hobby that, it wasn't encouraged. Your parents didn't tell you, oh, go be a writer. But I also, like Brittany said, my teachers would always read out my essays in front of the class, type of thing. So I knew, I enjoyed it a lot, but I always looked at it more as an academic thing. And then secretly, I would write little stories for myself. But and then, life happened and I moved around so much that I never really kind of, thought about it seriously. But in the back of my mind, I thought one day I might try and write something. And I think it wasn't until I was 26 and I read my first book written by an Indian American author who was also an immigrant like myself, that I suddenly, it just hit me that our stories are interesting and that, people do want to read them. And I think that's when kind of the seed was planted, that eventually when my kids are a little older, once I'm a little more kind of stable and everything with my life and everything, then I would pursue it. And then, of course, the whole thing happened with immigration. So that went out the door again. So then, starting over again, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. And then I think probably about 10 years ago, so when my kids were a bit older, we were more settled, is when I started thinking that I would write. But this time I was more focused because of my children. I wanted to write the books that I wanted them to be able to read, that they couldn't find. And this was back in 2010, 2011, that they weren't finding these kinds of books, and they were starting to read really, enthusiastically. And that's when I started thinking about it. And then, and I self-published back in 2014. But it was just, doing things on your own is, I don't know, it doesn't you need to have more experience and things like that. So, but it was a great learning experience to go through that. But in 2016, I finally decided that I was just going to give it a last shot and try, traditional publishing. And here we are. So
we're so glad that you are here. And it reminds me what you said, similar to what you were talking about, Crystal, about writing the book that you want to read or that you want your kids to read, which is really important. Crystal, do you want us to tell us a little bit about how you became a writer?
Yeah. So I also really loved just reading and being in libraries and being in bookstores when I was younger. And I enjoyed writing in class. Like every time we would get an essay assignment or we'd have some kind of writing assignment, I was the kid who was secretly like, yes, my time to shine. This is great. And so it was something I really had fun doing, and I liked making up stories, like as early as like 3rd or 4th grade, like elementary school stuff. But I mean, I didn't know you could be a writer, really. I thought that was just something for like older, very established white people. Like I didn't think that like brown people could do that. I don't know. And so it wasn't even a thing that was something I thought I could do. And then in like middle school, I was really, this is so embarrassing, I was really into boy bands. And so I was writing stories about boy bands and sharing them with my friends. And like they enjoyed it and I enjoyed it. And so it was just like this hobby that I kept coming back to and finding a lot of comfort in. And, you know, then I went off to college and I was like, man, I still really love this writing thing. What can I do that's like a practical writing career? And so I did the whole like major in journalism and maybe I'll be a journalist. And so I did all of that and it was great. And I still kept finding myself coming back to storytelling and fiction writing, especially because I was spending all of my free time reading young adult books and reading fiction stories. And I like very much felt like there needed to be more fully formed, like plus size fat characters out there. And I wanted it so badly. Like I was like, I will buy any book that's about a fat girl. I just will. I will do it. And so I was like, well, you know what? I really want to write those books and why not? And that was really what propelled me to, you know, to want to tell this story. And honestly, like Fat Chance Charlie Vega ended up being kind of inspired by my real life love story with my husband too, because we met in high school. And so that was like, it was just like a story I couldn't get out of my head. And so now I'm glad I didn't let the whole I like to write thing fall by the wayside, and I actually did something with it.
Nice.
Thank you so much for that. That goes for, I guess, anyone out there who's listening. Like, if you want to write, you should do it. Sharon, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into writing?
Well, I'm not, probably wasn't good at anything else, people. I wasn't like you all. I don't remember. It's not because I'm 65, but I was 25. I didn't remember much of my life. I don't know why. But I don't remember whether I stood up and thought, oh, yeah, I can write really well in class. I always keep saying, I want some teacher to say, Sharon Flake, stop saying that. You were a good writer, and we told you all the time, but nobody has stepped up to say that yet. What I did do is I think I came from a family of storytellers, which I didn't know. I just lived in the family, and they told stories all the time. You guys know how it is. We went over our grandmothers all the time. My aunt and uncles came over our house all the time. And I just remember listening a lot. You know what I mean? And I mean, when they told stories, like he walked down the street and I heard the noise of boom, 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 boom. You know, it was all the side effects. And in a sense that they didn't know that probably they had a protagonist and an antagonist. They had sound effects, right? They had the beginning, they had the middle, they had the end. So those are probably my early introductions to what is a good story, right? Even though I was going to the library, I did go to the library a lot. In middle school, I was a shy kid, so I hung out at the library. But when it came time to go to college, I wanted to be a doctor. I had done, they don't even have these anymore, candy stripers, right? I was a candy striper during the summer. I went to a summer where I like cut animals up and, they like little gerbils and things like that. And we dissected them and we did things to them in some program because I really wanted to be a doctor. But then the reality hits you when you get to college and you're like, Chem 11, Jesus, please. Can I help me get through this class? And so it really was a sort of like, okay, boom. Oh, that class is not working out too well. Boom. Ooh, that class accounting. Oh, okay, boom, right? And so, and then, but taking English along the way and this, and so, oh, well, wait a minute. I'm really good at, I really like this, teachers who just were really complimentary. I wasn't a great speller. I tell kids that all the time. And I look at some of my stuff and think, ooh, but that still would celebrate that I had something there that they could appreciate. And so again, I love all these stories because there means there are many entry points to a career, to your craft, to your life, and it's not going to look just like one particular way. So there is I'm still waiting for that teacher. Elementary, middle.
Anyone's out there?
Come up and tell me something
Hear it.
that I missed. And for 1 second, I'll say this real fast. I remember in high school saying I wanted to go to Temple University for journalism. At least back then, it's probably still true. They had one of the best journalism programs in the country. And I think, did you want to go for journalism because you wanted to write? Or did you want to go to journalism because we were a very news-heavy household? 2-3 newspapers, a week. Parents who read that's when the Sunday paper was literally that thick. And my parents and them read it all the way through. So I don't know if it was because of that or because there was some point I thought I could write. I'm not quite sure.
Thank you so much for that. So I want to take a minute because time really flies and it's already 7:50. So to our audience members out there, if you have questions for our authors, now is the time to ask a question and we will get to them in just a few minutes. But I have lots of questions I could still ask you guys. I would love to go back again to like the writing process. And I know you kind of already touched on this, but I would love to hear about your character development, especially as adults who are mostly writing about teenagers and what that's like and whether or not you feel like the characters have kind of like these preformed identities or not. So let's see. Brittany, can we start with you again?
Oh, this is a tough question.
Sorry.
That's okay. So, writing teenage characters is always tricky, being somebody who just hit their 30s. Talking about time flies. That happened fast. But I feel I've taken a lot of content from communities that are younger. So my friends will send me TikTok videos. I'm kind of plugged into the younger Twitter sphere, Tumblr, Reddit. A lot of the YouTubers that I follow are younger. So I make sure to just surround myself with younger voices and also read books by younger voices. There are plenty of young authors out there that are writing in, Gen Z speak. And yeah, I just try to stay as clued in as possible. And then as for, I talked a little bit about my inspiration for the Cost of Knowing, but I didn't talk about my process overall. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about that. I start with an outline that I follow pretty strictly, but it's always like really short. Like each chapter is like 1 sentence long, and it always contains what has to happen in the chapter for it to be in the book, and then the hook at the end that keeps the reader turning to the next chapter. And then besides that, as I'm writing, anything goes. And then the goal is just to draft as fast as possible. So the Cost of Knowing, the first draft was done in a month and a half.
Wow.
Slay was done in 11 days. The Spider-Man Miles Morales book was another month and a half. So
when you talk draft,
Jump, my next book is taking much longer.
When you talk draft, are you talking about like if the book is 150 pages? Are we talking 150 pages in a month and a half? Or what do you mean by draft?
About 200. So it's usually a shorter draft than the finished product. But my next book, The Jump, is taking longer because I have a baby. That changes things. So
I was gonna say you're a parent, like it's gonna take some time.
It's taking a little longer this time. It's okay though.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add about character development? You want to jump in there?
I'm happy to share a little bit too. So I do similar things. Like I'm always on TikTok. Like I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm listening. I'm a little creeper. I see how like, oh, you're younger than me and this is how you talk and this is what you like. And so, but it helps in a weird way. It does. And for me, I also feel like there is something universal about those teen years, no matter kind of what decade you grew up in, the feelings, right? The firsts, the intense emotions, I think are there no matter if you grew up, 50 years ago, or you're growing up now, or you're growing up 50 years in the future. I think a lot of that is going to still be relevant. And so I tend to use like music to kind of transport me back to when I was the age range that I'm writing about, and think about some of those feelings that I felt when I was that age. And it is surprisingly easy to tap into sometimes when you're listening to that song where you were at the YMCA dance and it came on and you were like, I got to go dance with my girls. Suddenly you're that age again, right? And so it's nice to I think, be vulnerable in that kind of way and remember what it was like when you were that age. And then I think that lends itself nicely to your characters. And I think just honestly, tapping into your emotions and like letting yourself kind of feel works really well when you're writing for teen voices.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Sabina and Sharon, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned a little bit before how, my daughters are usually my inspiration for the characters when I start out. But also when I was growing up, there was no young adult category. So I went from children's books to adult books. So there's nothing in between. And so when I write, I sort of, infuse the story and the characters with the things I wish I'd been able to read about when I was younger. And also as an educational consultant, I deal with like high school students, applying, getting ready for college or grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. So, I talk to them a lot, and I've been doing this for 25 years now. So, even when my own kids were little, I was still on a daily basis interacting with teenagers who would talk to me about, their fears, their plans, their dreams, their goals. If I was helping them apply, with their college applications and their essays and whatever, they would talk to me about their personal stuff. And then just hearing them talk with each other, and then when my kids grew up with, watching them and their friends interact. So all of that kind of obviously really helped to keep the, how teenagers talk today. But like Crystal was saying, the feelings of first love and your crushes and the fears you have for the future, what's going to happen? What if I don't get into this school? Or, what if this boy doesn't like me? Or what if that girl doesn't like me? Friend drama, those things don't really change. I mean, the lingo changes perhaps, the expressions change, but the feelings are still the same. And so, and music too, like I listen to all kinds of music, but I do have my, 80s favorites, from the time I was growing up and when we were having like our dance parties and, so you remember how you felt, the nerves and the kind of the excitement. And so I think all of that translates into any generation, I guess, the story of any generation.
Yeah, definitely. And Sharon, I know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sharon.
No, I was just going to say really fast because I know you're running out. Time is almost up. Well, my daughter is 30 years old, so she was around in my life when I was young. When I was young, when she was younger. But I'll tell you, I always tapped into my own feelings. Right? I always tell people there's a 6-year-old and there's a 15-year-old. I never did a lot with slang. Or like, it's funny, young people all the time say, we love your work because you use so much slang. And I'm like, no, I write in Black American English, right? That's what you think is slang. It's very little slang in my books. Even from the first book, I didn't use things that were dated, right? So I didn't use music from that era, unless you were like one book I wrote a short story that had to do with something in the 50s. Well, then, yeah, I wanted people to know it was in the 50s. But overall, some people say, why does it last 23 years? Because there's nothing in there for the most part. I would say very little that dates it, that landlocks it someplace. And so that's always sort of been my style. The life I'm in. Char's on a bus. She has a magazine. She's holding up, and a guy's looking at it. And I said it was Oprah. And then I went back and says, "Oh, Oprah. I love Oprah. But in 10 years, 15 years, is Oprah who we think she is?" And so I just made it. She just said, "That lady on that jacket, I really never liked her. You don't know who she is. You put whatever face you on there, on there. And so I think that's some of it for me in terms of locking. I in terms of young people and just, again, I love that we all come to this thing in so many different sort of ways. You guys are amazing. It's good to be on here with you.
I love hearing about everyone's process. It's amazing.
And it's interesting how all of us have come to writing at different stages in our lives as well. So it's always really interesting to hear how you're navigating different milestones, I guess, and still kind of writing.
Because my first book came out at 42. Can we just say real quick when people's first books came out?
I was 50.
Were you?
Yeah.
I didn't even think you were, in your 50s. Oh gosh.
I'm 53.
Ooh.
Wow.
Brittany, it's amazing. Brittany, what about, how old were you?
I was 28. Yeah, it was 2 years ago, 2019.
Crystal?
And this is my first book, so 32.
Okay. You get there.
Exactly.
Sorry, sometimes it's hard there's like a little bit of a lag. I don't want to cut anyone off. So it's 8:00 now, and we don't have any questions from the audience, but can I ask you all one more question?
Please.
Sure.
Awesome. So I'd love to know either, like, you're all adults and you're writing for, of course, like, adults are enjoying your books. I'm excited to read all of your books, but you're mostly writing for, like, these younger audiences. So I wondered if you could think of any books that meant a lot to you when you were either a kid or an adolescent. And if you can't think of any off the top of your head, maybe you could tell us about some of the books you're really enjoying right now that are meaningful to you. And
I can start.
Yeah, please go for it.
Oh, that lag is back again. When I was a kid, I think one of the books that had the most impact on me was Dave at Night by Gail Carson Levine, because that was the first time I saw a Black love interest in a book and went, oh my God, it could be. And so that was like a huge, like, I just wanted to take that book and hug it forever. And then also by Gail Carson Levine, Ella Enchanted, because, spoiler alert, the princess has a huge hand in saving herself at the end. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. Yes. So both of those books are really important to me when I was little. And then as for recent books, The Hate U Give actually got me back into loving reading. After college, I swore off books completely, and I was like, I'm going to be the only author who writes and doesn't read. And that's not a good take. But yeah, I picked up The Hate U Give when I was stuck in a bookshop in New Orleans, and I was like, oh my God, this is what books are like these days. Like, I need to read again. This is amazing. And so that got me back into it. So.
Thank you so much for that. Sabina, do you have any?
Not from when I was younger, because like I said, there wasn't really young adult, and I was reading these children's books, like, Nancy Drew type books, and then I jumped straight to like romances by Danielle Steele, and then I went straight to like Sidney Sheldon, and it's so inappropriate for like a 13-year-old or something at the time, but I would just read whatever I could get. But then when I started reading young adult, I really not young adult, I should go back. When I found these Indian American authors that were sort of telling these stories of immigrants, I was really in love with Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. She lives in Houston, I think. But she wrote a book called Arranged Marriages, which was like a collection of short stories, all about people who had arrived in the U.S. and they were around my age, and just how they were dealing, how they were adapting, and how what struggles they were facing, and what adventures they were having, basically. And then I also discovered a Indian Canadian author, Rohinton Mistry, who wrote A Fine Balance. And then I'm a huge fan of Khaled Hosseini, The Kite Runner, and all his other books as well. And there's so many. But when I started reading, I think Twilight was the first young adult book I read, because my daughter was reading it. She was like in grade 8 or something. And then after that, I just really started reading all the books that she was reading, because I wanted to talk to her about, talk with her about them. And so I just found the voices were so fresh and so bold. And I hadn't seen that when I was a young adult myself. And so recently I've loved Kelly Yang's books. Parachutes is one of them. Jenny Sanchez Torres, We Are Not From Here. Suzanne Park, she writes like these hilarious romance rom-coms. I mean, they're so funny. The Perfect Escape. There's so many. I don't even know where to start and stop.
Thank you for that. Sharon, do you have any books that were meaningful to you then or now?
Gosh, I'm not the person, I'm the person that I usually prepare so I can like put them on my thing so I can just remember them. I have a ton of new ones in my office right now. I would say when I don't, like I said, I don't remember much from when I was young, but I do remember reading Tiffany, which nobody probably ever heard of when I started writing young adults. I wrote from a young adult perspective in college. Why? I'm not sure. I tell young people it's probably because middle school was hard, and it wasn't because anything happened to me outside of myself. Right? You get to middle school and you start thinking your teeth are too big, your legs are too skinny, right? So it was that sort of introspective, critical view. And I think I just remember that. And so wrote from that perspective. But just reading some people, Sabina, reading Muted by Tammy Charles, people that I've been on some panels with. Jason Reynolds' books just passed on some to some young people that I know. Is it oh, He'll Kill Me? What is it? It's not Cool Kid. What is it? The graphic novel. So I just finished that. He'll Kill Me. I can't think of his name either.
The New Kid?
New Kid. So I just read that, finished that. So sort of all over the place, reading some stuff about race. I'm so all over the place, and and sometimes I just have to put things down because I don't want it in my head while I'm actually writing my own stuff. So
that makes a lot of sense. And Crystal.
Yeah, so I feel like with my writing journey, I thought for the longest time I had to write like literary fiction, like adult fiction. And it took me a long time to, I think, find young adult books again and realize like, oh yeah, adults are reading young adult books and they're part of the audience too, and that's fine. And so what really helped me, I think, get back into this appreciation for the YA genre, I like to say there's like 3 books that really pushed me forward to write my own. So there's Dumplin' by Julie Murphy, which I loved, and it's on Netflix now if you prefer movies, so you can check that out. Yeah, it's actually a good adaptation too, so it was very impressive. I loved the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series, so by Jenny Han. I just loved her voice and everything like that Laura Jean was going through. I was like, oh, this is exactly like a character I want to write, And then The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Just that beautiful. Beautiful story. And I read all of those books kind of around the same time and just thought, yes, like this is what I want to write. Like I want to have my books on the shelves with these writers because they're just doing phenomenal things, and they all captured just all the feelings about being a teenager so perfectly. And so those were huge inspirations. And I'm very grateful because not only did it encourage me to write my own book, but it also got me back into loving YA again, just screaming it from the rooftops and being like, this genre is the best. So I loved that.
Well, we definitely agree with you over at Oblong Books. That's why we started the Hudson Valley YA Society. We're big proponents of y'all's genre.
I love it.
Thank you all so much for sharing and talking about your books, talking about your lives. It's been such a pleasure to get to talk with you all this evening. It is a little past 8, so it's about time for us to wrap up. But do you have any parting words for the audience?
Thanks for having me here. This has been an amazing experience, and I'm super honored to be on a panel with all of you and get to talk with you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
same.
It's
Thank
been
you so
great
much.
reading. And keep having these things. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks for coming back.
And thank you
with
for
us.
hosting.
Yeah. Thanks for rescheduling, everyone. That was.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for your flexibility. Again, that was just kind of a crazy moment on the internet.
Can I take a picture before we go?
Yeah.
Sure.
I never think of these things. And guess what? Didn't even take the picture. No, I took it.
Here, I'll do this. I'll take a screenshot.
Okay, perfect.
I'll let you
Was
know.
I looking down when you did that screenshot?
Oh, I haven't taken it yet. Don't worry. Okay. So I'm going to take it in 3, 2, 1. Oh, nice. I'll send that to you all.
Thank you.
This
Thank
was
you.
so fun.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
And could you send us all each other's email addresses? So we
Yeah,
can-
absolutely. I will do that.
Thank you much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Bye bye.
Happy